So a very warm welcome to all of you. Basically, we are starting a new journey with old twist. We are starting polity. So in the earlier classes, we will basically focus on very basics, the terminologies, what they mean and all. And as it is a very mixed batch, so fully English should be accepted here. You know, no one has any issue. Some amount of Hindi, but the problem is there are people from South. You understand Hindi? You need yeah, you don't understand Hindi, no? And she does not. Anyway, even if there is any problem, you can ask. If there is any term you think that it is getting too much Shakespearean, so you can ask. We will tone it down. Okay. So keeping that in mind, we are starting it, and it will be a long journey of 2.5 months and something. Yeah, very good evening, Nagaraj. Good evening, Rabathi as well. So let's start. Indian Constitution, polity. Basically, there are various parts of GS2: polity, governance, social issues, and all. The institutions of India, like Election Commission and all, they are the part of the governance. Which is essential, but the polity lays the foundation on which governance you can study. Governance, because you will not understand the gravity of the institutions. You will understand that this is the provision, this is appointment, this is removal, this is that. But why it is so? Why it is this process? Why it is not other process? That requires intellectual understanding, the philosophical foundation. That is what we will try to build here. Is it clear? The scope here is polity, primarily Indian Constitution. In that we will understand, we will also move out of Indian Constitution for understanding few provisions of some act, some policies that have some kind of infringement, I would say. Some kind of infringement with the articles of the constitutions. Okay, so with that, let's start. First, we will understand few words. What do they mean? First, article. What is article? What do you understand by article word? Anyone, any idea? What do you understand by the word article? We often heard an article of constitution. What do we mean by that? Basically, a provision. Basically, whenever from now on you will hear the word article, yes, bilkul sahi, the provision of the constitution. The way you have in your notes, the point 1, point 2. Similarly, in constitution we have parts, chapters, point 1, point 2, and we call them by the name of article. The article 12 means point number 12. In that sense, another term that we use is section. Section also means provision. But there is a crucial difference. The crucial difference is article represents an element of sovereignty. Another term, sovereignty. What do we mean by sovereignty? Means supreme, nobody above it. Supreme. So article represents something that has element of sovereignty, and section represents a provision. Of course, the same way article represents a provision, section also represents a provision, but it is subordinate to article. Let's take an example. Indian Constitution, all the provision of Indian Constitution will be called as article. But under Indian Constitution, we have made numerous acts. The provision of those acts are called as sections. Is it clear? Both have the same force. Both are equally representable, both are equally enforceable. But the crucial difference is one has element of sovereignty, the other is a sub part of it. It means if, say for example, article says that every individual in India has right to murder. You all have right to murder, say for example. Can we declare it annulled? We can annul it, we can remove it. No. Why? Because it has element of sovereignty. But say for example, same thing is said by this part. Constitution article says you have right to life. Say for example, it says right to life. But then Parliament of India, the legislative body, makes an act in that they list that you have right to murder. So it directly contravenes what? Article. So it will be held as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Logic is clear. There is element of sovereignty. Sovereignty means it is done fixed. Nobody is above it. Nobody can judge it. Everyone is below it. All the acts, all the section must comply with the articles. This much is clear. And the word sovereignty is itself clear. Supreme. Clear these three words? Any doubt? People online, you will also participate when I say please write Y or N. Y for yes and N for no. Okay. With that note, let's move to another term. For classes, we will do terms only so that we understand everything comprehensively. The another term is state. What do we understand by state? अरे तुम्हें तो पता है, रुक जाओ, बाकी नए बच्चे. Yes, yes. A nation. And anyone else? He said a nation. Anyone else? Any idea what do we mean by state? अरे guess freely. Nobody know anything. Up what? Yes, population and territory. Okay. Anything else? Law. Laws. Okay. Laws. Okay. Is it political? Okay. Political, he is saying. One element we are missing in all this thing. The element of sovereignty. Say for example, this class. Can we call this class a state? If I apply your definition, we have a population here, we have a defined territory, we have laws here also. I'm teaching you, you are supposed to study and all. We have laws also here. Decorum has to be maintained. Nobody will slang anyone unnecessarily. Okay? You can slap each other if required, but not slanging. That's too much. Okay? So the thing is, we have law, we have territory, we have population, but still we does not have one thing, that is sovereign here. The word is clear. State means a territory having a population with a sovereign over it. For example, Antarctica. Antarctica is a landmass on the southern pole of India, the world. We all know that. Is it a state? If we apply this definition, it is not a state. Why? It has a territory, it does not have a population, it does not have a sovereign. So in India's case, India has territory, defined territory we have population, we have a sovereign. So India is a state, but now depending upon the size we classify them. So for example, India is a nation state because India is a large landmass. Sri Lanka is a island state. Maldives is a island state. Okay, they could be subcontinental state as well. For example, former USSR, it was a big chunk of land. You could have called it a subcontinental level state. Is it clear? Three elements are there. Depending upon the size of territory, we can call it nation, subcontinent, or island. This much is clear? Okay. In this, we need to talk about a very important component of territory. First, we need to this. Okay, what used to happen in earlier times, we used to have king or queens. They used to expand and contract the empire depending upon their caliber, of course. For example, modern empire was from Afghanistan to Myanmar, so-called Akhand Bharat. The BJP used the term Akhand Bharat for that. So that represent a population and a sovereign, but no fixed territory. It had a territory, but no fixed territory. It depends upon the king. For example, today, if Modi ji is in power, the India will remain the same. Rahul Gandhi comes to power, same. It is not going to happen that if Rahul Gandhi comes to power, the India will shrink to Delhi. If Modi comes to power, we will become the Akhand Bharat. So we have a component, the modern component is fixed territory. So that is the definition of modern state. Components are clear. State means territory with a population and a sovereign. Modern state means fixed territory. That's the difference between the older concept of state and the newer concept of state. So that's why the concept that we have in mind, for example, the Akhand Bharat concept that we often use, that is not valid in modern times, because modern times we have fixed territories. Is it clear? Okay. Now, A very basic understanding that we need to understand. Remember this term, we will understand the entire polity in context of post-colonialism. Now, what is this? I believe we all understand colonialism. We do. What do we mean by colonialism? Basically, a political control over territory to exploit it economically. For example, Britain exploited us, and the industrialization of Britain was funded by the deindustrialization of India. We all know this part. So, colonialism means where you have a political control, particularly you have a political control. Now, what is post-colonialism? It's a phenomenon that describes that the colony, once a colony, the country which was a colony of some other country, is now an independent state. But there is a problem. The problem is it retains colonial features. It retains colonial feature. For example, our constitution. We have made our constitution by basically ransacking all the constitutions of the world. We ransacked them, we picked the provision we liked, then we indigenized them. Why am I stressing on this principle? Because that is the reason we have too much confusion in India. Too much confusion. For example, if I talk about this word, secularism. This is the word you will hear in news every second of your life. Every second they will say, we are secular, we are secular, we are secular. What do you understand by secularism? Separation of state and religion, okay? And anyone else, any definition? State and religion ka separation, we have separate. Huh? Liberalization of what? Liberalization is very vast term. Liberalization can be at individual level of laws, of economy, of what? Politically, overall. Chalo, theek hai. Okay, let's take it also. Liberalization. Anyone else? Any other idea of secularism? What do you understand by this? Different religions. So different. अच्छा, basically free to choose. जो मन में आया चुनो, जो मन में आया छोड़ो वाला सी. ठीक है? तो अब why we have so many definitions? Because this word never originated in India. There is no proper definition. There is no proper translation. For example, the word Alexander. We all know Alexander. He was a king and he is known in Hindi as Sikandar. So we have opted a translation of Alexander because he came in ancient India. Since ancient India, modern India, we have a large time to internalize. That's the difference. A value in which you are born is different. A value which is imposed on you is different. For example, you are born in Delhi. For example, you are born in some village of Haryana, highly conservative. They do not allow a woman to go outside, all ghungat and all. All of a sudden, she comes to for preparation of UPSC in Delhi, and she sees a very liberal culture. A cultural shock, first thing will be there. A woman standing on these thekas and all, having liquid, smoking, and everything is going on, and nobody cares. There, if you lift your gungat, and all of a sudden it's a breaking news of the village. So why this difference? Why are rural people are like this, and Delhi, urbanized area is like this? Difference is Delhi has internalized the cosmopolitan nature, the Western values. Unlike our rural areas, they're still indigenized. They're still rooted in the values of cultural ethos we had for a century. You're getting this point? That's the problem that post-colonialism says. Post-colonialism basically says that what has happened, most of the principles that we have in this society, they are imported. And because of this importation, there is too much confusion. For example, you will hear this in news every day. BJP often says that Congress's secularism is minority appeasement, Muslim appeasement. Even BJP says that we are actually secular. We does not care about the person whose religion is there. Then they say your secularism is basically majority appeasement. So everyone describes it differently. We will understand it in three terms only: Nehruvian, Ambedkar's, and Gandhian ideas. Gandhi talked about secularism as every class we will have dictation. Every class we will have dictation. Don't worry about that. Okay. So what I was saying, Gandhi. Gandhi basically said, secularism for Gandhi meant Sarva Dharma Sambhav, respect for all religion. For Ambedkar, secularism meant security of the minority. He popularly said the secular credentials of the state are determined by minority. By this, minority is not does not mean religious minority like Muslims or Christians. No, any one minority. For example, LGBTs. LGBTs, they are sexual minorities. The majority of the section are not homosexual, but they very small people are. So the amount of security those people enjoy will establish India's secular credentials. That's Ambedkar's definition. The Nehruvian definition is what I think Ritu said: separation of state and religion. So you're seeing different definitions of different scholars. Every party has their own version of secularism. Why so much confusion? Because this principle did not originate in India. I have just taken an example. We will deal in detail in secularism. It's very important. Is it clear? That is what post-colonialism means. Entire polity that we will study in this class for 2 or some months, that will be in the context of post-colonialism. And that's why we will discuss it exhaustively. This term will come again and again.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Well, according to Nehru, it was the separation of states and religions, apart from like Ambedkar and Gandhi. What was it? According to them, Ambedkar and Gandhi.
I told you, according to Gandhi, it was Sarva Dharma Sambhav, respect for all religion. According to Ambedkar, the secularism of the state is determined by minorities, how safe they feel, how secure they feel. We will have exhaustive discussion on this because it's very important. So that's why you see there's too much, I would say, distinguishing. For example, that's why we say our polity, our government is modern. It has executive, legislature and all. It is modern, but our society is still, the polity is modern, but our society is traditional. That is the problem we witness in India. That's why when Supreme Court said adultery is not illegal, Supreme Court never justified adultery. It said that section is wrong. The terminology was wrong. We will discuss that also. So basically, when Supreme Court, for example, recently Supreme Court recognized prostitution as a profession. A lot of people were offended by it. Especially in a rural village, they will be like, yeah, what you are doing this, you are recognizing such a heinous thing. That's their morality. So that's the difference. The case. Supreme Court is an example of modernity, an institution well established in Western values of liberalism, individualism. Supreme Court gave the judgment of prostitution as a profession by considering that individual right, that woman's right to live. They did not care about the society's morality about that woman. You're getting the point. But the society is traditional. They judge that judgment as a moral debauchery, kind of declining of values. The Supreme Court is basically recognizing we will see prostitution every corner. We do see. There is, I always say, there is always prostitution done in every places, but the problem is you do not recognize that. Why no party recognize that? Because they know society is traditional. If BJP brings a law to recognize prostitute as a profession, then its core base, which is highly religious, will get offended. A problem, BJP understand this very well. Same goes with Congress. It is not Congress is pure. For 50 years they ruled, out of 75 years. They did not bring a law for that. Because they also understand we are a modern. That's why in all the Supreme Court judgment, laws of the government, the problem we find is the laws, the judgments are modern. They believe in individual rights. What you want to be, Supreme Court cares. What the society wants from you, Supreme Court does not care. And that's what we will understand in fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are individual based. They talk about your right to life, your right to privacy, your right to speak. They do not talk about society's right to silence you, society's right to kill you, society's right to maim you. Got the point? Is it clear? That's the foundation we are going to study. This very important point, it will come again and again. Very important. Is it clear this point? Any confusion? People online, any confusion? Okay, then we will move to again. So we have understood a few terms: article, section, sovereignty. We have understood. With respect to what is post-colonial society and the context. We will study the entire polity. We have understood the word state as well. So I told you what is the definition of state. TPS, territory with a population and a sovereign. Now we have to divide the state. What are the parts of the state? Legislature, executive, and judiciary. These are the three parts of the state. One is legislature, other is executive and judiciary. And why we have done this? Because we live in a modern state. I told you a modern state. For that, I will give you a brief encounter with history. I believe in history, you must have studied about 30-year war, or if not, then you will study 30 years war. Any idea about this 30 European wars? It was 30-year war between church, state, something. Yes, world history, you can say, of course, European history is world history. Always remember this thing that the entire polity and IR is Western sciences. Entire polity is European social science. Entire international relation is American social science. Everything that you study here was either born in America or Europe or was derived from there. You will not find other concept anywhere else. These are all concepts are Western born. This much is clear. First thing, 30-year war. Any idea anyone has about 30-year war? What? Renunciation of what? Christ के time पे?
A war between Christians and kings, the monarchy and the...
हाँ, that was a 30. He is trying to arrive at some. What renunciation in what context? पोप को चर्च ने नहीं, पोप को चर्च ने कैप्चर कर लिया था. अच्छा, ठीक है. You have मतलब basic idea थोड़ा. He is striking at the right point. The basic thing is what happened. We divide the world into ancient, medieval, and modern history. Ancient, basically, you will study in world history. Ancient period was known as the period of enlightenment, basically called as reasoning. You will study Greek history. And then you will come to the modern history. There is a problem between the time, medieval time is known as dark phase of European history. That dark phase means, why it is called dark phase? Because the church ruled over it. In medieval Europe, the church was the authority. The Pope, as currently, Pope Francis, I believe the current Pope is. That Pope word was the law. Religion was the dominating factor. State was here. So religion became sovereign. Why? Because the Pope has a direct contact line with the God. He used to dial the number and that person used to command him and he used to make the law. State has to obey. But a time came, these people said, why we obey you? When I am the king, this is my territory, I have to rule the people. Why I should obey the command of the church? So basically you have to thank a person by the name of Martin Luther. Not the American social right movement, that's a different person. Another person, a Greek priest basically. He asked a few questions from the church, 95 Theses it is called. And we all know, religion is a thing of belief, not questioning. The day you start question religion, it will dismantle itself. You cannot question religion, otherwise it will cease to exist. He asked some question. He said, if you have a phone line with the God, dial the God and ask him this question and answer me. Church could not answer. Of course, they cannot answer. It's a matter of faith. So ultimately, what started? A war. A war between religion, dominated by church, and the other part was led by the kings and the queens, who said, we are the sovereign. You are not sovereign. And that war is known as 30-year. Why we are discussing this? Because at the end of 30-year war, there was a Treaty of Westphalia. There was a Treaty of Westphalia. In that treaty, it was established that the state is supreme. So this war, who won this war? Church lost. The king and queen won. And they established the principle that we are the supreme power. You are below us.
When was it treaty, sir?
Year. I don't remember the year exactly. You have to search, it's a state teacher. But you got the logic. The Treaty of Westphalia basically established that the state is supreme. At that point of time, the state was ruled by the king. Now we have a democratic setup. But the principle remains that the state is supreme. That's why when our parliament makes a law to ban triple talaq. Why? Triple talaq is a matter of faith, but parliament make a law, and everyone has to obey. They cannot say we will not obey this law because our religion says so. We abolish sati. Tomorrow we may abolish this nikah halala practice is also there. For example, we are increasing the age of women to 21 years. You cannot say that my religion dictates that a woman should be married at 14 years of age. If you say so, you will be in prison because you have violated whom? The state. And who is the state? The sovereign here. Your religion is not sovereign. If parliament wants, it can ban a religion. I'm just taking an example. They will be riots. That's a different thing. That's a different thing. But the problem is, but the question assertion is, state is sovereign. We will command. So after that, when it happened, so we decided we have done away with one evil. That is the power of religion. Now we have a state. A problem came is we have single power. The king is the law. The king is the judiciary. The king is the legislature. So we decided we have to split that. Power has to come to the people. For that, the king's power must be diluted. And that's why we divided 3 parts. Earlier, what used to happen? The state, once the principle was established, the state is supreme. But what was the problem? That king was everything. That person was the law, everything. Ultimately, we decided people must get the power. So we have legislature, whose purpose is two purposes they have. What are those 2 purposes? To make laws and to keep an eye. The legislature has 2 purposes: to make laws, to govern the entire territory, and second, keep an eye on executive and judiciary both. Primarily executive, but judiciary as well. So that's why when you choose somebody, whom you vote, you do not choose executive. Whom we choose legislatures. It's simple, na? You are the people here. You will vote. You choose your MPs and MLAs. You do not choose your prime minister, chief minister. You choose your MPs and MLAs of your territory. If something goes wrong, you will go and grab that person's neck. You usually don't. That's a different thing. I think they have Z-class security. You have nothing. So you to MP and MLAs, and these people goes to parliament, make laws for all of us. And out of these people, few people becomes minister. So what is minister? We come to another definition. So who is minister? Minister is a MP or MLA who is the part of executive. The word minister is clear? You minister clear हो रहा है? But मंत्री जैसे हम बोलते हैं, मंत्री बेसिकली क्या होता है? मंत्री इज बेसिकली नथिंग. एमपी और एमएलए जो किसका हिस्सा है? सरकार का हिस्सा है. एमपी एमएलए है वो, लेकिन सरकार का भी हिस्सा है. दैट पर्सन इज एमपी एमएलए बट एज वेल एज द पार्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. दैट वर्ड इज मिनिस्टर. यहां तक क्लियर हुआ? So minister serves dual purpose. They are the part of executive as well as legislature. And legislature's role is to make laws to govern the entire country and keep an eye on the executive on our behalf. And that is why we have budgets. Every year, why legislature passes a budget? You know the budget. In budget, the government asks the legislature, sir, I have this 200 rupees of requirement. Please approve this. Why they ask the legislature? Why the budget is passed by the legislature? Because we, the people, have chosen few people to represent us in the legislature. They, on our behalf, approves government. Ki bhai, these 200 rupees have been approved by the people of India for you. This much is clear. Next is executive. We all know the purpose of executive is to implement policies. Whose policies? Made by these people. Remember this, they cannot do anything that is not by law defined by legislature.
But they also help in making policies. No?
Of course, that is the problem with our democracy, which we will understand. We have a parliamentary system. So in principle, legislature control executive. In real life, executive control legislature. That's a different thing. We will discuss that later. Yahan tak clear hai na principle. So executive. Executive basically implements policies. Policy is a subset of law. Laws are general. Then after that comes the rules and regulations. Rules and regulation basically implements a law, and they are made by executive. So basically you can say policy. And we all know what is the role of judiciary. जुडिशरी का पर्पज है चौधरी बन के बैठना. They are the biggest chaudhary of all. Basically, they give moral judgment to everyone that you have done wrong, you have done wrong. But when you ask what you have done wrong, they will be like, we are immune from your review. Okay, we will understand that. That's why judiciary, we will understand a scholar, Pratap Bhanu Mehta. He has called Indian judiciary deeply paradoxical. It talks about values, ethics and all with everyone except itself. We will understand that. Particular judges we will also understand. तो यहाँ पे पॉइंट्स क्लियर हो रहे हैं सबको? यस, कोई डाउट कुछ पूछना है? एनीवन क्लियर? इतना लिखिए एंड देन वी विल कंटिन्यू. लिखिए प्लीज राइट डाउन. फर्स्ट स्टार्ट, यू कैन पुट द चैप्टर हेडिंग एज टर्मिनोलॉजीज इफ यू लाइक. चैप्टर हेडिंग टर्मिनोलॉजीज लिख लिया? कोई नहीं. नंबर 1 आर्टिकल. In terminologies, number 1 है article. Put an arrow or hyphen, whatever you like. Write down. It is a provision. It is a provision of the Constitution. It is a provision of the Constitution, comma, having an element of sovereignty. Having an element of sovereignty. Next is section. Within section लिखिए. It is a provision of a law. It is a provision of the law, comma, which usually runs subordinate. Which usually runs subordinate to the articles. It's usually run subordinate to the articles. Next is sovereignty. Within sovereignty, write down the supreme, comma, indivisible, the supreme, comma, indivisible and unquestionable power. The supreme, comma, indivisible and indivisible, मतलब divide नहीं कर सकते. That's the one concentration. Indivisible and unquestionable power. As I told you, you cannot question the parliament's law. Parliament bans hijab, you have to obey. Otherwise, you will be put into the jail. That's the simple thing. Okay. Next, state. Yes. Next is state. State may please write down. It is a territory. It is a territory with a population. Territory with a population, comma, ruled by a sovereign. With a population ruled by a sovereign. Next point in state. State में another point. Next point in state. The state is divided. The state is divided into 3 parts. The state is divided into 3 parts. Full stop. Number 1, executive. Number 2, legislature. Number 3, judiciary. Done. Next, write down legislature. Legislature. Within legislature, write down the prime purpose. The prime purpose of the legislature. The prime purpose of the legislature is to formulate laws. Is to formulate laws and keep an eye on the executive and keep an eye on the executive on behalf of the people. On behalf of the people. Full stop, continue in the same para. The parliament is supposed to represent the will of the people. You can underline that. The will of the people. Next we have is executive. Within executive you write down. Acha, एक second. Just look at here. The purpose of executive is policy making and implementation of the law made by legislature. But I forgot to mention two things, that within executive we divide executive into two parts. One is temporary executive, the other is permanent executive. We have two parts of executive, temporary and permanent. The temporary executive is the politicians we have. Every 5 years we get a new branch or new part of politicians who becomes the ministers. They represent our temporary executive. Then we have permanent executive, which is represented by all these IAS officers. Everyone in a government organization, from a secretary of a department to the peon in that office, they all are permanent executive, because they once recruited remain for the entire tenure of their life, which is usually 60 years. Up till 60 years they remain there in the office. They will not change. But temporary executive shifts, and the logic of shifting of temporary executive is to refresh the will of the people. Today you have given, for example, somebody comes and promises you this and that. How election take place? Let me go through that also. What happens when the elections are announced? We are studying principles, not details. So once the elections are announced, every party comes to you, promises you something. I will do this, I will do that, I will do that, I will do that. Then you are supposed to evaluate those promises. Whichever you like, you will vote that person. And ultimately, whosoever will get the majority of the vote will become your MP or MLA. This is a principle, and out of these MP and MLA, whichever party gets the majority, they form the government. On every 5 years, we believe that the people changes. We believe the people changes. So that's why every 5 years we have elections. Otherwise, we could have, this permanent executive runs the government basically, nobody else. These people does not know much. Only thing they do is, once they come to power, they go to their secretary. They call their secretary at home and say, implement this policy. I don't care how you will do, but you will do. I made the promise, you have to implement. Kuch bhi karo, chori karo, chakari karo, but implement this policy. That is what happened. That's why you have seen a lot of politician promises a lot of things, because they do not know whether it is feasible or not. Once they come to power, they come to know it is not feasible. That's why you have seen a lot of policies that they promise during election, they do not implement, because it's not feasible. उस समय तो बोल दिया मजे मजे में वोट लेने के लिए, but later on they realize it's not feasible. But it's necessary component. And we want refreshment, the way you hit refresh on your PC, that every 5 years the will of the people may change. We want to ascertain that the government who is in power enjoys the will of the people. If the people does not like the government, they want to change the government, so be it. ठीक है? अब लिखिए इसमें एग्जीक्यूटिव में. The purpose of the executive. The purpose of the executive is to implement the laws. Is to implement the laws made by the legislature. Is to implement the laws made by the legislature and the orders of the judiciary. And the orders of the judiciary. We all know judiciary gives order, but they cannot enforce it. Supreme Court of India has no power outside that premise they call Supreme Court. Outside that premise, who has the power? Government. They can order the government to do something. They themselves cannot do anything. We will understand and will know that Indian Supreme Court is world's most powerful court. Our Supreme Court is the world's most powerful court. We will understand the reason for that. Anyway, now next line in the same para. Next line. The executive can be divided. The executive can be divided into two parts. The executive can be divided into two parts. Number one, temporary executive. The ministers within temporary executive, write down the ministers and the MPs slash MLAs. The ministers and MPs slash MLAs who are the part of government, represents the temporary executive. Represents the temporary executive. Full stop. The temporary executive, you can write short में TE. The TE is supposed to seek fresh mandate. Seek, SEEK, is supposed to seek the fresh mandate of the people. The fresh mandate of the people to ensure that the government runs by the wishes of the people. Runs by the wishes of the people. Next is permanent executive, PE. Within this, write down PE is represented by the bureaucracy of the government. PE is represented by the bureaucracy of the government. Full bureaucracy, though it's a negative term, you will understand later. Bureaucracy of the government, full stop. Their purpose is to willfully and faithfully implement the mandate of the people. Basically, what I was saying is, I said that the permanent executive has to willfully and faithfully implement the policy of temporary executive. Why? Because they are not judged. That is something called as, basically, we will understand that the executive is responsible to the legislature, and legislature is responsible to us because we elect them. We do not directly elect the government. We elect our legislature. They are responsible to us, and executive is responsible to them. That's the logic that it works. And the civil servant, they enjoy something called as cloak of immunity, because nobody knows you, nobody care about you. If you implement the policy, fine. If you don't implement the policy, again fine, because they will punish who? Government in turn will punish you, that I told you to implement this policy, you did not implement, now you will suffer disciplinary action. That's the part of the government. You are not punished by the people, you are punished by the government, who are the servant of people. So indirectly you are punished by the people, indirectly, not directly. Anyway, so we were writing judiciary. Yes, please write down judiciary, man. The purpose of judiciary is to keep an eye on the executive and legislature. on the executive and legislature to ensure that they run as per the wishes of the constitution, as per the wishes of the constitution. Done. Last, write down, put a star over it. It's a very important thing. Post-colonialism. Post-colonialism. Within post-colonialism, write down. These are the societies. These are the societies which were once the colony of some foreign power, which were once the colony of some foreign power, full stop, though, THOUGS, though they are no longer under political control of another country, comma, but still they have elements of colonial legacy, in their society, full stop. Next para. This is considered as the biggest reason that contributes to the phenomena of within inverted commas overdeveloped state. Phenomena of overdeveloped state. Full stop. Continue. Next para say. In next para continue. Overdeveloped state is a state. Overdeveloped state is a state where polity is modern, but society is traditional. Put a full stop and you will tell me why. We have discussed just right now. Why polity is modern, society is traditional? The new people, yes? Go ahead. Yes? Anyone? Yes?
Polity and
Why polity is modern, society is traditional?
polity is modern society. Why?
Why?
Because they have new ideas, Western ideas.
Yes, the reason is we imported them. We took an example of Alexander. The word Alexander has a Hindi parlance in Sikandar. Alexander translation Sikandar because it happened in ancient times. So over time we derived at a translation. It always happens. The problem we just discussed in example I took of secularism. The problem is these are very new concepts. For example, if Britain had captured us in ancient time, so today we would not have fought with Britain. We would have been part of Britain because we have internalized British values. We were unable to internalize British values because they came in modern times, and that too they remain perpetually foreigner. That's a different point of debate. If they would have come in ancient times, that's why the Mughals who came from outside as well. ऐसा नहीं है देखिए, India has been a land of invaders. It not a land of invader. A land has been invaded a lot of time. For example, even us people, not the South Indians, the North Indian, I believe everyone except two people. You are North Indian, na? So I believe everyone is North Indian. So basically, who are North Indian? The theory, you know, Aryan invasion. We all the people who came from outside. So these Tamil Nadu people can call us foreigner, and they will throw us out from here. That you foreigner, you are teaching us in Hindi. Okay? So the logic is, we have been a land where people came, but they became the part of India. The Aryans came, they instituted this caste system and all, but ultimately they became the part of India. The Mughal came, they did a lot of atrocities, but the defining feature why we do not call Mughals as foreigners, we call Britishers as foreigners. Why not Mughal? The thing is, they came to India, lived in India, plundered India, spent in India, died in India. It was not like they came India, exploited India, took wealth somewhere else. They enriched Iran, for example. It never happened. They came to India, but they lived in India as well. Though, the part of policy is different. The atrocities that were committed is a different point of debate. But that can be debated always. For example, if Aurangzeb was atrocious, for example, Ashoka, he also did a lot of atrocities. He killed hundreds of people, it is said, to come to power only. And he stopped only at Kalinga in Odisha, today's Odisha. After that, he stopped bloodshed. Before that, he spilled a lot of blood. So again, the problem is never judge past from present day morality. Today, something you considered as good or the definition of right and wrong today, if you apply that definition in past, the past will always be criminal. For example, sati, at one point of time, it was a norm. It was not widely prevalent, but it was a norm. If you would have said against Satina, you would have been lynched in that time. For example, R.M. Roy is credited for doing away with sati. His own family protested against him. The procession that took place against him, his own family members were there. So at that point of time, it was seen revolutionary. Beyond this, bhai, what he is saying, sati has been in practice for centuries. Kya baat hai? But the thing is, you should not judge that Indian society from today's standard. For example, today, even if though Supreme Court has recognized prostitution as a profession, it is still a taboo. Imagine marrying a prostitute. देखो क्या होगा घर में, क्या तांडव, what kind of तांडव will be in your house. But your value will be different. You think everyone deserves a second chance. That was not her problem that he was forced into a profession. She was not in profession by wish, but by force, for any reasons. And you believe that a good person, you want to marry that person. Your family would be like, oh my God. You got the point, but you should not judge them. Their morality is different. Your morality is different. Now you have become UPSC aspirant. So your morality is evolved. You have studied this all drama. Western values, liberalism, individualism. Then you come and lecture your parents what you know about individualism. You got the point. Never just pass from present day morality. Oh, bhai, dil pe lagi kya? Anyway, point is clear. So we were discussing. We will continue this post-colonialism again, and we will move further. So tomorrow we will start the syllabus. Is it clear? Chalo. Have a nice day, everyone. Yeah, and you too also. Have a nice day. Happy learning. Yes, Nagaraj. Polity is basically all the concept we see. They are derived from the West. इसमें ये महीना लग जाएगा पूरा. Because fundamental is the majority part of.
Start with preamble.
Of course. Huh? 16 तक. What 16 तक? आर्टिकल 16 तक आने में जल्दी आ जाएगा. उससे पहले आ जाएगा. पहले आ जाएगा. बाय.